officials in the state committed murder and that they're covering it up. Why would they want to be involved in this?
Because he's dead. I think things went too far. It was late. There was alcohol involved, but they're all family.
Said it feels we're the only ones fighting for the truth of what happened to John O'Keefe. And me and my family and my attorneys and my team have marshaled every resource to get to the truth. It just feels like no one else wants it.
Okay, just to be clear, you didn't do it.
We know who did it, Steve. We know. And we know who spearheaded this cover-up. You all know.
Yes, we do.
And no, she didn't do it. No, she didn't do it. This is an innocent woman. She didn't do it.
I tried to save his life.
Yeah.
I tried to save his life at 6 in the morning. I was covered in his blood. I was the only one trying to save his life.
Why'd you admit to it?
She didn't admit to it. She didn't admit to anything close to that. Nothing close to that. And you should know that.
That was like 3 or 4 times she admitted to it.
No, she didn't.
That's not true.
She asked a question. She asked a question, which is very different. She didn't admit to anything.
Let's go.
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
Okay. How is everybody? Wanted to talk today about the pre-trial campaign for Karen Reed's innocence. And it looks like as we are in trial now, jurors are being picked now for Karen Reed's trial. The night before, Court TV, Vinnie Politan, has a program that is not to be believed. Mega gaslighting going on with the audience. All about Karen Reed, and we don't have a position, and we're going to offend some people, and no one's going to be happy with this episode because we're going to be just so fair and balanced. When it was anything but. But before we get into that, before I get too absolutely triggered by Vinnie Politan and what I thought was the bottom of the barrel as far as true crime media. If you are new to this channel, I am a trial junkie, covered the Nexium case from the early hearings on all the way to Keith Raniere's trial, Larry Ray's trial, Ghislaine Maxwell's trial, all from the courtroom. And I started this podcast because I was very disappointed in our true crime media that ignores victims in favor of promoting killers and their dubious innocence fraud campaigns. And it seems like everybody gets in on it just a little bit. Picks and chooses. It's like you have to pick at least 1 or 2 of these campaigns to jump on the bandwagon if you want to be popular in true crime reporting. And I'm finding it unacceptable. So really appalled by Court TV last night. But on a happier note, fantastic. I mean, you could knock me over with a feather. I've been very critical of Netflix. I've made ties. It's been reported there's ties between the Netflix CEO's wife and her supporting of the wrongful conviction movement and the DA's campaigns. So what they decided to do, George Gascon and George Soros, was create a multi-million-dollar fund and fund former defense attorneys to run as district attorney. So in blue cities all over the country, we have 2 defense attorneys talking to themselves in court, and there's no one there representing the victim, and there's no one there representing the public. And the Netflix CEO, you can see by the Netflix CEO's wife fully supported Larry Krasner's campaign in New York and has been on board with other wrongful conviction movement charities. So really excited to see an actually fantastic true crime show on Netflix. On Netflix. I know you could knock me over with a feather. Netflix put out, finally put out a good show. It's called Homicide New York. No interviews with convicted murderers, lots of interviews with homicide detectives, prosecutors, and most importantly, victim families. Dick Wolf, who has the Law and Order series, he's behind it. All the Law and Orders, SVU unit, all those he's done. And this time he's done Homicide New York. Only 5 episodes, but they're all fantastic. And I would encourage everyone to check it out. So when something's good comes out that's good, I'm love to draw your attention to it. Finally, it's a long time coming between the Making of Murderers and the When You See Us, speaking of bottom of the barrel. So before I begin, the judge, to give you a little bit of a background, the judge has forbidden anyone in the courtroom during the trial of wearing any kind of pin, t-shirt, anything to show which side you're on, either for John O'Keefe. Of course, we're talking about the Karen Read case. Karen Read is accused of running over her police officer boyfriend, John O'Keefe, the early morning hours of January 29th, 2002, and letting him die in the snow. And so this is on the Karen Read Facebook page, or the one color is the answer. I believe this is Facebook. Yeah. Karen Read says herself, the way to get around this is we're all going to wear pink. So this becomes important in Vinnie Politan's show. He's the court TV anchor. And we shall get into it. So he starts out telling us that everyone is going to be disappointed. No one is going to be happy with his reporting because this is such a contentious case. Now, if you've been listening to my Karen Read coverage, it's very unusual. This is what I would call, and my mind can be changed. And I'm one of the few people who actually enjoys being wrong. I think it's very exciting to find out maybe everything that you thought was wrong and get new information and see things a different way. And that's a theme in this podcast about how you change one's mind. But in this case, he's saying it's so contentious. We've had this innocence, what I call an innocence fraud campaign for Karen Read that started before the trial. And there's been arrests for harassing witnesses' family. Now, I believe this is based on Johnny Depp's campaign that started before his trial. And we know Adam Waldman, his lawyer, was thrown off the case for witness tampering. So very much a similar style. And lo and behold, if Johnny Depp's lawyer doesn't show up as a guest on this case, but we'll just check it out from the beginning. Here's Vinnie Politan on Court TV talking about Karen Read. Take a listen.
I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you for joining us tonight. And this is a trial unlike any trial I've covered in my history here at Court TV. And I begin every segment when I cover it with my disclaimer, because I know I'm going to get the DMs. I know both sides are going to attack me for something I said or didn't say, a question I asked, a question I didn't answer, a piece of video we put on the screen. I have no agenda here but the truth. No agenda but the truth. And we need a trial in this case to figure out the truth. And we're talking about the death.
Well, that's interesting that you say that we need a trial, because Karen Read's side tried to get the case thrown out before it ever reached trial. So I think this is some major gaslighting he's doing here. He protests a little too much. He has no agenda, but he does have agenda. He wants the truth out. Okay, Vinnie. And he makes a big deal that he's going to be fair and balanced. No agenda here. No sides push. Definitely not Karen Read's defense attorneys involved at all in this episode. Let's take a listen.
Of a Boston police officer. John O'Keefe is his name. And that's what this trial is about. It's about what happened to John O'Keefe. Something terrible happened to him. Someone is responsible. Prosecutors believe it's Karen Read, his girlfriend. They believe that she backed her car into him on purpose, ran him over, drove away, left him to die in the cold. But she says, no, that didn't happen. I was framed. I dropped him off at a party. Some other police officers were there. Something happened. He got beaten up. They dragged him out onto the front lawn, and then they framed me for murder. So those are the two sides.
Well, there's no sign that he was ever dragged out. So if they did it, maybe they did it by hot air balloon. No trail of blood left in the snow, no sign of that. That's an issue, and there's no motivation for anyone in the house to do it. And the fact that everybody would be okay, but of course, when you say this, everybody says it's a conspiracy of silence. The blue wall of silence, is that what it is? The thin blue line? They're all towing the line, right? And I just don't see the motivation. The only one who was angry with John O'Keefe was Karen Read. And what the state is going to argue is that there were issues in the relationship before this. And Karen Read they will say she was having some kind of affair, and John O'Keefe caught wind of it. And John O'Keefe's sister's kids are on the witness list. We'll take a look at that in a minute.
They both have some evidence that seems compelling, and they both have some evidence or some things that you question, which is why you need a trial. You put the witnesses on the stand, you bring in the photos, you bring in the videos, you have cross-examination, and you try to figure out the truth. So, what do we have for you tonight? Tonight, they were back in court today, and we saw for the first time, and this is from her second arrest. So she was arrested initially for manslaughter, right? For recklessly running him over and leaving him in the snow to die. Well, then she got indicted for murder, so she was rearrested. And we have the body cam video from that rearrest. Let's take a look and a listen.
I love Vinnie's delivery here. And then, guys, it's like he's telling you on the corner, hey, guys, and you know what happened next? She was rearrested again. It happened again. You'll never believe it. This incredible thing. Nice delivery, Vinny. I enjoy it.
So, initially, your arrest was on probable cause out of the district court, okay? So the charges that you were arrested on initially were out of district court, out of Stoughton District. That's where the arraignment was. It was district level charges. Today, grand jury indicted you on these charges, which is second-degree murder, vehicular homicide, and leaving the scene of a death, okay? So those are the charges that grand jury indicted you on. So now you're being charged and will be arraigned in Superior Court, Norfolk County Superior Court in Debra. Okay? So
bail doesn't apply anymore?
Typically, I'm not. So we don't set the bail. But typically, once murder comes into play, people don't get bailed out.
So it's not manslaughter anymore. Is that the difference?
That's correct. It's a higher degree of taking a life. Okay? So that's the charges that you're being charged with now. And you were indicted by grand jury.
Okay, you're aware he was beaten up by Brian and Colin Albert. I mean, we're all in on the same joke, right? My tail light is cracked and junk is pulverized.
Okay, you need to abide by the rights that were afforded to you, okay?
The police here are like, I think it's best that you say nothing here, Karen. It's better that you say nothing. But this is, of course, a different story that she saw him being beaten. The story that she told Nightline was that she dropped him off. She looked down at her phone, which is what I find so hard to believe. Not that I don't find this story hard to believe either. But that she looked down at her phone at the crucial moment he was walking in the door and drove away. So what that does, if you have a legal kind of mind, is it leaves your options open. So you're not sure if he went in, he could have been outside, something could have happened to him outside or inside. I didn't see it. And as I've said before, cab drivers have dropped me off. And I'll look over my shoulder and they'll be watching to make sure, because the most important part is that I walk through the door safely. And these are strangers, making sure I get through the door safely. This is her boyfriend. She wasn't checking. Out. Well, pull it back.
Listen, but you were ready to do your rights, okay? And I'm sure he's going to do it again. All right? If you want to talk to us, you want to give us a story, definitely. We'll take it.
No, I mean, I know you already know the story, so I don't need to.
Interesting. She doesn't say a lot. She's behind the computer on the other side of the table. So this is the officer who's processing her, so that's his body camera, but she's right there on the other side of the table. We don't see her in this video, but you're hearing her and what she's saying. So I want to break down what she said a little piece by piece for you here. And begin with the first one where she says, you're aware he was beaten up by Brian and Colin Albert. So where's the potential evidence of this? Like, where does this come from, right? Because she's not an eyewitness to it. It comes from, first, some blood that is in the snow. And I think the argument from the defense is going to be that the blood is on top of the snow. How does the blood get on top of the snow? I think this is what they'll argue. How does the blood get on top of the snow if he was run over by the car before the snowstorm started? I think that's part of what they're going to say. And what they've also been talking about are the cuts on John O'Keefe, Officer O'Keefe's arms that they say are not consistent with being hit by a car. They say they're consistent with perhaps being attacked by the dog that the owners of the home.
So I took these autopsy shots out just out of respect for the family and left the audio in.
Home have subsequently given away. It's not getting hit by a car. It's being attacked by a dog. These are things we've heard inside the courtroom, but here she is. Before we're really hearing it inside of the courtroom, we're hearing it from Karen Reed herself now making these allegations. Now, prosecutors want this in front of the jury because they say this is inconsistent with other things that she has said, that her story changed over time. Now, something else that she said, we're all in on the same joke, right? And I mean, it was a strange way to say it, but it's said with a little bit of an attitude, I think. But is that how someone who is factually innocent would react in this situation? I don't know. I'm not an expert in that.
Right. It would be unusual for you to call it a joke. It's for her, it's a matter of her freedom being taken away. And if you saw my thumbnail where she, according to police officers, she said, I hit him. Now she says, did I hit him? And it's very much like the interrogation scene in My Cousin Vinny. Interesting enough, My Cousin Vinny comes up at the end of this episode where he said, I killed the clerk. I killed the clerk. You, right? With a question mark. And the officers testified it was a confession, right? My Cousin Vinny. So this is very much like the Cousin Vinny defense here. But I would think that it wouldn't be seen as a joke. Nothing's funny about being falsely accused of murder, but okay, maybe she thinks it's a cosmic joke, I guess you could say, for your defense. But very glib, very surfacey. Believe one of my listeners who's a psychiatric nurse thinks she is an antisocial personality, glib, superficial charm, no empathy, very comfortable outside the law. I don't know. Certainly we have seen many emotions from her, but remorse or sadness for losing her boyfriend.
But she's clearly saying, yeah, come on, we're all in on this. Alan Jackson brought this up in court, and they've made arguments because of one of the investigators' relationships with the Alberts, who she's pointing the finger at in this body cam video. Alan Jackson pointed out that the state trooper, who's the lead investigator in all this, had some level of a relationship with the project, but didn't reveal it. Take a listen.
So obviously we're asking questions about your relationship with Julie Albert, with Chris Albert, and with Colin Albert. Do you understand that? Answer, yes, sir. Question, and you're saying that you're minimizing, quote, minimizing your relationship to the grand jury, correct? Answer, yes. He finally, under the scrutiny of a federal grand jury, admitted that he had been lying about his relationship to the Alberts, which means he lied to the grand jury, which means the evidence was distorted in front of the grand jury.
How does that mean it was distorted? How does a relationship change it? How does that change any of the evidence? You have to show that he acted in a way that's unfair to Karen Reed. So a lot of people will say police corruption, but not support that with anything. We're in a small town. There's going to be relationships. I think the defense, they were going to, someone babysat for someone's sister babysat someone in the house that night. The hearing I heard, it seemed like a giant reach to me, but okay. Let's see how it plays out in court.
And again, reminder that the investigators were or are being investigated by the feds. And we're in front of a federal grand jury, and that's...
Yeah, how about that Fed report? The Fed report, according to the hearing last Friday, which I felt was terrible for the defense, said that that they absolutely agreed with the state on everything except the back of the head, which the state wasn't even arguing anything about the back of John O'Keefe's head. So they're in agreement. Everyone's in agreement that he was run over. Little bit of a problem with that federal report, and that federal report hasn't been released, so we don't know, but it doesn't seem like the state isn't arguing that there was any kind of impropriety in this case. They could have argued it, but decided not to. So many things have changed. They've changed tactics as to who did this. They've moved key suspects. They've changed it basically on a dime. It's hard to keep up. Even Melanie Little, we'll get to her, covers this case on YouTube, said to Murder by Maestro, I've lost track of where we are with the defense as to who's to blame now. And she's covering this in detail.
What Alan Jackson is talking about there. Statements from the lead investigator. I mean, does it mean something that he is somehow connected to folks here? Well, the defense thinks it means a lot. Now, the other thing is she said, my tail light was cracked, excuse me, and John was pulverized. The cracked tail light is going to be a big part of this trial, a huge part. Prosecutors say, well, there's like remnants of it on the victim. Like, how do remnants of the cracked tail light get on the victim if she doesn't hit?
Pulverized is a very callous word. It's a very callous way to refer to someone that you love. In my view, it shows a lot of animosity towards the victim. Again, it's like it always seeps out, this anger. She can't contain it.
With a scar. But the defense has some other problems, has some other ways to explain this and some things they're pointing out. For instance, the video that we've looked at tons of times. This is the morning after, as now she's going to try to find John O'Keefe. She backs her car up into John O'Keefe's car. Did she crack that back right tail light at that point? Is that when it was cracked, or did she crack it when she ran him over? And the defense is alleging that pieces of the tail light are being planted, that evidence is literally being planted. One thing they're looking at is the local police chief. This is about a week after John O'Keefe's death. The police chief said, I was working the 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. shift as the detective sergeant. I was advised Chief Berkowitz was at 34 Fairview Road and had possibly discovered more evidence. He directed our attention to the area where O'Keefe had been discovered. I was able to observe a red broken piece of hard plastic, which appeared to have been broken off a motor.
The state says that they have video of, and we'll see it in trial if they have it. Let's see, let's wait. Commonwealth says that they have video. 8:20 something, excuse me for not remembering exactly, of Karen Reed's taillight being broken then. So when are they planning it? This happened. It doesn't fit, but let's see. Let's wait for court. So this wasn't the part that I found, get ready when the guests come, I found so appalling.
Vehicle light fixture. The temperature overnight had reached 45 degrees with heavy rains, which melted much of the snow from the storm on Saturday. This revealed much more of the area. So prosecutors are saying, the rain comes down, it gets warm, and now the snow is gone, and now we found more of the tail light. The defense is saying, why is the chief just happened to be driving by and happened to find that piece of evidence? Because again, they're alleging this huge police cover-up. The final part of one of the statements that she made in this body cam from her arrest was, I know you already know the story. And again, she's saying, this is what she believes is a police cover-up and frame job of her. Let's take a listen now.
It looks like they really followed also the OJ trial and really conjuring up at all the media, our anti-police media sentiment, and any public sentiment against the police. And if you don't think that her defense team looked at the OJ trial.
Well, think again.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Joan.
Some of the arguments today about getting this video in front of the jury. First, we'll hear from the prosecutor.
Over Miranda and advised her to stop making statements, and repeatedly states that to her during the course of her making statements. But the sum and substance of it is she says something to the effect of, are you in on the joke? And then makes some sort of reference to having witnessed Brian Albert and Colin Albert essentially smash John O'Keefe's head into the taillight, indicating that that's how her taillight was broken. Doesn't make any sort of further statements about why she would then leave the scene after that occurred or anything like that. But these are, again, different accounts that have been made.
Yeah, really good point. So she watched all this happen and didn't get any help for her boyfriend, who she's supposed to love, till hours later, till 6 a.m. She's back at the scene. I don't know. I'm not thinking she thought that one through.
In direct variance to prior statements that she made.
So here you see where the prosecution is going. Like, she's telling different stories at different times. We've seen this in other cases. Why do people tell different stories at different times? The truth is the truth. Why would the story ever change? And it's a very effective way to go after a defendant. Very effective way. Now let's take a listen to the defense response.
We object. After John O'Keefe was found dead on the lawn of Brian Albert's home, I immediately got a letter out to the state police saying, I represent her, I will surrender her, no need to arrest her, just call me and I'll bring her in. They ignored that and they arrested her to get her into custody. I would assert ultimately to make the arguments that Mr. Lally's making today. Then, astonishingly to me, after the grand jury issued
excuse me, does anybody remember the police saying, we've read you your rights, meaning you have the right to remain silent? They're reminding her that she has the right to remain silent. That's sort of a funny way, if you want her to make statements, to remind her of her Miranda rights. Little odd, no?
Indictments based on basically no new evidence. They upcharged her and once again did not contact me, despite the fact that she was completely in compliance with the terms of her release and had made every court appearance. They arrested her again.
All right, let me bring in my special guest and actually bring her back in. Joining us in Orlando, Florida, human behavior expert, jury consultant, Susan Constantine. Susan, thanks so much. First, I want to begin with the statements that she's making. And I understand she had been...
Okay, look at, she's in a pink jacket. Anyone remember the color to support Karen Reed? Do I have to remind you guys? One color is the answer, pink. And he'll start calling them, Vinnie will, the Pink Brigade, the Pink, the Pink Crew. That's my words, not his. So he got the memo's been out to Vinnie Politan so that all his guests talking about Karen Reed are to wear pink. But he just wants to get to the truth. Everybody's going to be mad on either side. What a joke.
Arrested previously, lesser charge, gets rearrested, and then starts making these statements like, you're aware, when she's told she's been charged with the murder, you're aware he's beaten up by Brian and Colin Albert. What'd you think of the tone and the nature of these statements she was making at this moment?
Challenging, and she's aloof. But that doesn't mean that she's not truthful. So during break, what I did, Vinnie, is I took all those statements and I ran it through Deceptio AI, which is a phenomenal program in detecting deception to create a nice baseline. And guess what?
See, we don't need our court systems anymore. We have detection AI. AI is absolutely preferable to any real evidence. Just put their statements through it. I mean, they love this kind of stuff at Court TV. Body language experts. Anybody remember? Was this on Court TV or Law and Crime when they had the expert palms up? Up, Wendy Adelson's palms are up. She's speaking honestly. I mean, how dumbed down do you have to get?
Drum roll, 100% truthful.
Wow.
100%. Now,
Shocking. The woman wearing pink, the Karen Reed support color, going on a show, a totally non-biased show, is saying that Karen Reed's 100% truthful. What a shocker. Drum roll. What a shocker.
one word was out of character. So the language that she was using, when you analyze it with scrutiny, with each word and the order in which she speaks it, take away the voice, just the words, came up 100% truthful. Now, if...
Take away the voice, just the words, 100% truthful. Take away your common sense, and she's 100% truthful. Leave your common sense at the door, because AI is here to answer it all for you. What a joke. This is garbage, garbage.
She believes what occurred. Her tonality and her voice and her body language will all mirror that. And what we're seeing is she's very combative. She's very aloof. She can sometimes come across smug, and she's standing her ground. So would an innocent person do that? The question is, yes. She's challenging, which is she's not.
Yeah, would an innocent person who's been in a relationship, very intimate relationship with a man who just died, show smugness and zero remorse? Yeah, leave your common sense at the door. That's totally normal. Deception AI has got it all figured out for you guys.
Not taking the other approach as the victim. She's coming at him like a bull. So just at the first view of this, without going through all of the other statements and then reading them and then analyzing them and then comparing them, just those questions are those that she said, those statements were 100% truthful.
Now, Susan, you reminded me of something. When I was a prosecutor, there was one person who I was convinced was innocent. There was a grainy, this is way back when, so the video was grainy, obviously, and it was of someone stealing something. And the person who was accused came into the prosecutor's office to view the video with his attorney. And they showed him, they said, because the prosecutor, I wasn't handling this case, someone else was, but I was right there watching it. And the defendant looked at the video and said, that's not me. That's not me. And I could tell that he was convinced it was not him. Like, he knows what he looks.
Yeah, that's not me is very different. That's very assertive and outraged. She's saying it's a joke that she's being accused, falsely accused, according to her. And then coming up with a totally new story. That is very different, Vinnie, than that's not me.
And was screaming at the top of his lungs, yelling at the prosecutor, and stormed out of the office, and his lawyer was left behind. I could not believe what I had just seen, but it stuck in my mind all these years, the defiance and going after the prosecutor because you have wrongfully accused me of something. That's not me in the video. And what I just heard you describe is, to a lesser degree, what you're noticing, because she's not blowing up at that moment, but is what you're noticing from this body cam video.
Yeah, and we've both been in the courtroom, worked on many, many cases, so I know exactly what you're talking about. I've had another case where there was a police officer who was actually on the jury. And in fact, one of the attorneys said, I don't want him on the jury. I said, no, I want him on the jury. He's saying everything right. He's totally in sync with what I'm looking for. And at the end of the trial, he looked over when he was found not guilty. He smiled at the defendant. So the point is that it's really easy to make these assumptions because somebody's angry or they may look like the bad guy or whatever, and they could be completely innocent. You know, if there's a great Netflix movie that just came out, which was The American Nightmare. If you would have watched the very beginning of that, you would have thought for sure he was guilty.
What did I say about American Nightmare? I said this was going to be the inspiration for many an innocence fraud campaign. And there we are. There it's mentioned again. There it is again.
Guilty.
Don't give away the ending. Don't give away the ending. I'm going to watch it now this weekend.
Okay, sorry about that.
No, that's fine. Susan, we're out of time for tonight. Thank you so much for staying into the second hour with us. Really appreciate your insight. Great to see you. Have a wonderful weekend. Susan Constantine, folks. All right, when we come back, we'll bring in our think tank, Ben Chu, Bernardo Villalona, Philip Dubé. Can Karen Reed sell it at trial? They'll let us know when we return.
This is an innocent woman. She didn't do it. It's a controversial case that's divided a community.
Karen Reed is accused of murdering her police
charges. She gets rearrested, and she's like had enough. And there you hear her speaking with one of the arresting officers. A big day inside the courtroom as they get ready for next week when this trial begins with jury selection. Here's a look at all the big moments.
Now that it's time to actually try the case in the courtroom, I don't have a motion from the defense to admit third-party culprit. And as you're well aware, I have to make findings before any mention of any third-party culprit evidence or even an opening goes before the jurors. Given that I have no information at all, I mean, I don't know who the third-party culprit is, even after reading 4,500 pages of discovery. I don't know what motive a third-party culprit might have. I don't know how it's relevant. I don't know if it's remote or if it's current. I don't know if it's speculative or if it's relevant. I don't know if it will prejudice or confuse the jury. And if it's hearsay, I have a whole other series of factors I have to consider. So, Ms. Giannetti, are you pursuing a third-party culprit defense?
We are, Your Honor, and I'm prepared to address that.
So who is the third-party culprit?
We are under no obligation to name any specific third-party culprit.
The Commonwealth seeks to admit irrelevant, inadmissible, and prejudicial prior bad character and propensity evidence against Ms. Reed by admitting inflammatory evidence of an event that purportedly transpired in Aruba on December 31st, 2021. The Commonwealth has put forth no reliable evidence to suggest that the incident that occurred in Aruba on New Year's Eve has anything whatsoever.
That lawyer, that female lawyer, looks over it. She looks extremely over it.
To do with O'Keefe's death, or that this remote and isolated incident was even a point of contention in their relationship at the time in question.
These are not isolated statements. These are not just one time 4 weeks prior. It's not too remote in time, and it does show sort of the nature of the relationship and as it's evolving over the course of that month, from the date of the incident in Aruba all the way through until the date that Mr. O'Keefe is killed. So for those reasons, the Commonwealth would submit that it is relevant as to motive, it is relevant as to absence of accident, and it is relevant as to absence of mistake.
If he was not hit by a car, as both our expert and FBI confirmed, then he was attacked. And if he was not hit by a car, then there is a third-party culprit or culprits. You know, it is not our job.
Right. He says, here's really important. It's not our job to solve the case. We're just going to poke holes in the state's case. So we're not going to give any kind of cohesive defense.
To solve this case for the prosecution. It's our contention. They had the opportunity to do that, but they failed. Starting with Brian Higgins. He was present at 34 Fairview Road. on January 28th to 29th. He was close friends with the homeowner, Brian Albert. He had a prior romantic interest in Karen Reed. In short, he was present that night, he had a motive, and there is plenty of consciousness of guilt cover-up evidence with regard to Mr. Higgins. We have evidence of bad blood between Colin Albert and John O'Keefe.
And what you can see within that cruiser camera video at 8:22 in the morning is the damage to the right rear taillight of the defendant's vehicle.
What a day. Both sides just going at it. And you look at that courtroom is packed every time. The trial hasn't even started. Pre-trial motions, standing room only in Dedham, Massachusetts. Let's bring back in, or let's introduce our think tank tonight, or should I say, pink tank. Joining us in New York City, former senior homicide prosecutor, founder of Villalona Law, Bernarda Villalona. Also with us in Los Angeles, California, Deputy Public Defender for LA County, Philip Dubé. And in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., the attorney who represented Johnny Depp. Oh, yeah, he won the case in that defamation.
He didn't win the case. It was a split verdict. But look at it. Everyone's in pink. Everyone's in pink.
Trial fellow at the American College of Trial Lawyers, Ben Chu. Great to see everyone.
So we have pink dress, purple pinkish shirt with a pink blazer and a pink tie. And he'll reference it.
I want to put up on the screen some of these quotes from this arrest video of Karen Reed. First one, you're aware he was beaten.
They're appealing to a mob that's harassing the victim's family, that's been indicted and jailed on witness harassment. And that's the side, because that's the money side, right? Absolutely stomach turning.
Up by Brian and Colin Albert. Bernarda Villalona, are they going to be able to sell this? Is she believable when she says it? Do you think that this is someone who may...
Oh, she's totally believable. Did you not just hear about Deception AI? Were you asleep at the wheel when this woman said she put it through Deception AI, this great program that AI has never been wrong in the history of the world? Did you not hear it? Didn't she not hear it? Deception AI, end of story. Palms up, end of story. It's like such an insult. So, I don't know how you can insult our intelligence anymore.
Testify as well?
Vinnie, if I were the prosecutor in the case, unless I absolutely need to, I would not open up about these statements because I will want to see how the case plays out before I make that decision as to whether to introduce these statements to a jury. That way you can also keep the defense on their toes on whether their client is going to testify or have to testify. But in the very beginning, I wouldn't mention it. But then again, their case is so circumstantial, they may not have a choice but to mention those statements and start arguing that the statements are inconsistent because there's a consciousness of guilt.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Bernarda. I'm always weary.
You don't have to remember anything when you're telling the truth. Your story does not change because the truth never changes. And anytime you have a campaign like this that goes from suspect to suspect to suspect, that has a new killer every day, and that when you disagree with them, they say, oh, maybe you're the killer. And every campaign does this stuff. Your eyebrow should be raised. This is innocence fraud 101. My opinion could be wrong. Let's see what happens at trial. But all these things are big red flags to me. There is no need, regardless of how you feel on this case, to go after the victim's family members. Life is hard enough for them.
As a prosecutor, of putting in statements from the defendant, because I think she's not telling the truth, but they are self-serving, right? So you can keep them out and force her to get on the witness stand. I mean, that happened in the George Zimmerman trial. He didn't testify, and his whole story was in front of the jury because the prosecutors played a video of him telling his ridiculous story. And it was enough. He didn't have to testify. No cross-examination. Philip Dubé, let me put up another one, where she said on the day she's arrested, we're all in on the same joke, right? Like, and the day she's arrested for this, she is convinced, or at least trying to convince the arresting officer that she knows this was all a cover-up.
Well, that's not what I'm hearing.
What are you hearing?
When she says, when I hear her say we're all in on the same joke, I think what she's saying is, you know, you've got this wrong. You know, you've got the wrong person here. I don't know what you're talking about. You know, the problem is, Vinny, if they're going to put on a third party.
We're all in on the same joke. You take it that you think that was a joke, that you have the wrong person, that you're being accused of murder. That's a joke. Oh, pink eye guy thinks Karen Reed's statements are exonerating. Big surprise. Shocker. Shocker. Shocker, everyone.
Culprit defense. She has already identified through her police statements who she believed the culprits were. And now to leave it sort of.
Dean Walker, nice to see you. Thanks so much for the super sticker. I appreciate it. Let's get back to pink tie guy here.
Vague and amorphous and Delphic and subject to your imagination. It's going to look like you're desperate to try to point the finger at somebody. The third-party culpability jury instruction throughout this country is pretty uniform. In order for you to earn that jury instruction, which, by the way, is sort of a subset of causation, the prosecution has to prove that there's a homicide and that she was the cause of it. When you're putting on third-party evidence, you're trying to show that somebody else was the cause of the death. So her problem right now is that she's just floating the idea that it may be somebody else. But really, when you think about it, it's sort of imaginary, and it's subject to any.
How is it imaginary? She said she saw it, that she saw John O'Keefe get pulverized. How is that imaginary? Maybe imaginary for you. And how are we to know what's imaginary and what's not when it's said like that? Where is he getting the idea that that's some kind of thing from her imagination? This sounds like Amanda Knox's defense. I was asked, which nobody says happened, not the translator, no one, that she was asked to imagine what might have happened. And she said, I was there. Shari D, I'm here for the long haul. All right. I'm wrong. I'll say I'm wrong, Shari D. Nice to see you. But I mean, to start this show off, at least I will say where I stand. I'm not pretending I don't have an opinion and that both sides are equally as convincing to me. I mean, this is just so dishonest. And frankly, I'm at my limit with this stuff. I really am. I'm finding it really hard to stomach. Every day, you know, jumping on what they think will be really jumping on what I think is the most funded campaign. And it looks like a very well-funded campaign that Karen Reed has going here.
Sort of unreasonable doubt without any specificity. So I think she's in danger of a judge turning her down in getting that jury instruction. There has to be some evidence to corroborate it, rather than just merely having a motive to want to hurt the guy or the opportunity to want to hurt the guy. There has to be something substantial in evidence connecting those two guys or whoever the third party culprit is to the homicide.
Right. So that's bad for the defense. Meaning you can't just point, what he's saying is you can't point fingers willy-nilly. And apparently that tape is 90 minutes. We only just heard the bit of it. So the part where she says, is this a joke, et cetera, that whole tape, according to the Commonwealth, it's 90 minutes. And I think that Karen Reed's own words may be very damaging to her.
Otherwise, what you're doing is you're spitballing the imaginary doubt for purposes of reasonable doubt, and the judge is going to shut it down.
Oh, no, that's not what he's saying. What is he saying? He's saying the judge is going to throw that out because she was spitballing some imaginary doubt. This guy's a public defender. Where did they find this guy? Let's see how it goes. Let's see how the judge rules, but I don't know. I think that's a very all damaging statement. She's been read her Miranda rights. She's being warned about her Miranda rights. I think the state has a very good point. That doesn't look too good for Karen Reed to keep changing her story.
Shut it down to the effect that they can't make the argument, or shut it down that there's not the instruction?
They won't get the instruction. They will not get, we call it Saudi or third-party culpability, because the case law is clear. Not only, can you show a motive and an opportunity, but you have to show substantial corroborating evidence to prove it. Otherwise, you're really misleading the jury with what I called earlier the imaginary doubt.
I've seen defense.
So is he confused? Does he think that is some defense evidence there? Just Karen Reed saying it is enough, and that was from the defense? I'm so confused here with how he thinks that is helpful for the defense not getting a third-party instruction there.
Attorneys mislead the jury once or twice here on Court TV. Not the ones on the show, but the ones in the courtroom. Ben Chu, another thing she said, my tail light was cracked and John was pulverized. This tail light is going to be a big part of this case. The question is, when and how was it cracked? And was it cracked even more by investigators so they could plant evidence? I mean, that's, I think, where the defense is going with all this. Could a jury find that to be credible and reasonable?
So the state has to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. And of course, the defense is under no obligation. He's right to solve the crime. I'm just saying, on practical purposes, as a defense, to not give any kind of alternate theory is going to be hard, or alternate motivation is going to be hard. Is it going to be enough to just say, well, these people are all police officers, so they're all protecting each other, and he just got out here magically in the snow? It's going to be very hard.
I think it could. I think she has a Marissa Tomei, My Cousin Vinny kind of sassiness that could appeal to the jury.
That's interesting. Someone else in our meeting mentioned that today, the same name. All right, our pink tank is with us the whole night. Up next.
The pink tank. The pink tank. Absolutely. Thanks, Jill Downey, for becoming a new member. Appreciate it. Welcome aboard. I found that absolutely a low light for bottom of the barrel court true crime reporting from Court TV. And I think that, see, we're human animals. We like to agree with each other. We like to be part of something. That's how these innocence fraud campaigns really gain steam. It's exciting. You're among like-minded people. It doesn't feel good to be part of a minority. So what a program like that does is says everybody on here sees that the defense has a stronger side, the winning side. Don't you want to be on the winning side, the good side? She's so sassy. The jury's going to love her. And if you caught my opening, I found her to be terrible when she's asked who did it. And how dare they bring up Marissa Tomei's fabulous, iconic character in My Cousin Vinny? Who can forget her onesie outfit, floral outfit, fashion icon? How dare they bring that into it? How dare they connect it with this gruesome case? So let's look at the witness list is out before I go. And also, Turtle Boy is threatening to get a hold of the witnesses. Very scary. So first, hold on one second. My apologies. Please hold, guys. So I just want to show you. Here is, hope you all can see that. Here's the proposed exhibits. Also, one of them is his hat, which is, we're saying, where's his hat? Okay, so Cellbrite stuff, lots of police officers, Michael Proctor. So these are all police officers in the first couple pages. Then civilian witnesses. Not all of these may testify, but they're on the list. Take a look. Jennifer McCabe, Matthew McCabe, Carrie Roberts, Kurt Roberts, Paul O'Keefe, Aaron O'Keefe, Juvenile with initials KF, Juvenile with initials PF, Michael Camerino, Catherine Camerino, Brian Higgins, Brian Albert. Right now, Higgins is the new suspect. Am I wrong on that? From the defense. Ian Whiffen, Dr. Justin Rice, Daisy Ormus, Kathleen Wilford, Dr. Gary Fowler, Medical Director, Good Samaritan Medical Center, Terry Kunn, Nicholas Bradford, Bode Technology. Look how long this is. Bode Technology again, Julie Albert, Christopher Albert, Colin Albert, Ryan Nagel, Tristan Morris, Caitlin Albert. Huge witness list. People from the crime lab. Huge list from the prosecution, defendants list. Very much similar. Brian Albert, Caitlin Albert, Christopher Alberts, Colin Albert, Officer Nicholas Barrows from the Digton Police Department, Trooper Evan Brent, Yuri Bukuvnev. I think I just butchered his name. My apologies. Christopher Curran, Carrie Curran, Nicholas Curran, Stephanie Devlin, Brian Albert again, Brian Higgins. So some similarities here. Matthew Kelly from the Canton Fire Department, Surgeon Michael Lank from the Canton Police Department. Huge list, 71 witnesses. John O'Keefe Sr. for the defense, it might be called. And then there's the expert witnesses. So these are all the expert witnesses that are going to disagree with the state witnesses. Frank Sheridan, MD, forensic pathologist. Chris Van E., PhD expert in biomedical and mechanical engineering. Richard Green, expert in digital forensics. Daniel Wolf, ARCA Inc., Penns Park, PA. Andrew Rentschler, PhD, ARCA, again, Penns Park, PA. Scott Klein, BSME, ARCA again. So that'll give you a sense. But most alarming was before Melanie Little became queen of the Free Karen Reed movement, there was Turtle Boy. And here he is on video. This is from Twitter. This is from Heels in the Air, also on YouTube. This is a video of Turtle Boy talking about hold on one sec. Talking about the jury. Let me just push it back.
Impoundment of jurors' names during trial. That's one they're going for. Why do you think they want to impound the jurors' names? Because who outed the Chestnut juror? Remember that? The one woman on the who hung the Michael Chestnut trial in, what was that, July? The jury lists are public. So I got the jury list and I went down the list and I found the juror who hung the jury. And I shamed them, as I should, because it's shameful to do that to Sidney Chestnut and Michael Chestnut's parents and Michael Chestnut's kids. It's shameful. So why wouldn't I do that? Now, impoundment of jurors' names during trial.
Okay.
That's what they're going for. Why do you think they
Why
want to impound
shouldn't
jurors'
he
names?
do it? Why shouldn't he do it? Because it's called harassment. That's why you shouldn't do it. And no one's asking for your opinion, Turtle Boy. That's why you shouldn't do it. So before I go, I'm going to end the way I end my Adelson or Dan Markel case episodes. And because this is before trial, there are no victim impact statements. But there was a pretty interesting article from, where was this from? Hold on one second. This is on MSN. A courthouse circus surrounds his alleged killer, but John O'Keefe's loved ones are focusing on remembering a good man. And there's a picture of John O'Keefe holding his goddaughter, daughter of friend John Jackson 15 years ago. Adorable baby. And let me go down a little so you can see. And to say who this article is written by, story by Danny McDonald. Braintree, by any measure, the few months that straddled 2013, excuse me, I'm losing my voice a bit, 2013 and 2014 were a difficult and life-changing stretch for John O'Keefe. His sister Kristen died from an aggressive form of brain cancer just months after her diagnosis. 8 days later, his partner and best friend at Boston Police, Pat Rogers, took his own life. Months after that, Kristen's husband, Stephen, died unexpectedly from a heart attack. But it was John O'Keefe's response to such dark times that those who knew him say is a lasting testament to his character. He jumped to become the guardian of his niece, Kaylee, then 6, and his nephew, Patrick, then 3, morphing into a suburban dad practically overnight, helping with homework, driving into and from softball practice. He was a good man, said John Jackson, a close friend of O'Keefe's from college. John's life was cut short, prosecutors say, when his girlfriend, at the time, allegedly ran him over and left him for dead in Canton during a blizzard in 2022 after a night of heavy drinking. The court case has attracted national attention, and some fear that the memory of who O'Keefe was has been lost. Amid the circus atmosphere that for months has pervaded the Denham courthouse, where the trial will begin today, April 16th, for his alleged killer, Karen Reed. Gaggles of protesters, egged on by social media and blogger-fueled allegations of a cover-up, have waved place cards that rallied against police and prosecution, at times even booing and shouting at O'Keefe's friends, parents, and brother in what loved ones view as a stunning breach of common decency. I think we can all agree that that's a stunning breach of common decency. I don't think you have to be a loved one to view it as such. Several of O'Keefe's friends and family members told the Globe, the spectacle has detracted from the real shame of the case, the loss of a loving uncle, a loyal and generous friend, and a dedicated police officer. Reed has pleaded not guilty to charges of second-degree murder, motor vehicle homicide by negligent operation, and leaving the scene of an accident causing personal injury and death. She contends she is the innocent victim of a cover-up by Canton police and local prosecutors seeking to pin O'Keefe's death on her and protect the true killer or killers, a charge the Norfolk District Attorney denies. Reed remains free on bail. Privately, O'Keefe's loved ones are convinced Reed is responsible for his death. No one planted anything in our heads, said his brother Paul O'Keefe. No one brainwashed us. They say Reed facing consequences for O'Keefe's death would provide some modicum of justice. Paul O'Keefe hinted there was some friction between his brother and Reed in the weeks leading up to his death. He had considered hanging out with the couple on New Year's Eve, he said, but opted not to because Reed and his brother were bickering. He still kicks himself for not seeing more of John in the weeks preceding his death, he said. But Brendan Kane, who grew up with O'Keefe in the same street in Braintree, said he and his wife attended a Bruins game with Reed and O'Keefe 3 weeks prior to his death. She put on a good show, he said. We liked her. The case has rocked Canton, a suburb of 24,000 plus residents south of Boston, where O'Keefe was living at the time of his death and where his parents now take care of Kaylee and Patrick. The Fuhrer cannot change a cold reality. O'Keefe is dead. Its finality that his family and his friends still wrestle with. Paul O'Keefe, who attends every court hearing with his parents, said he still reaches for his phone to text his older brother. More recently, it was when legendary Alabama football coach Nick Saban retired. Both O'Keefes had grown up fans of the Crimson Tide, and he wanted to tell John the news. I don't think it's fully processed, he said. Paul O'Keefe said that his brother's catchphrase was, "It's only a movie." It's etched onto John's headstone, and it was his brother's way of trying to take the edge off the craziness that life throws at you, he said. Several friends held up John O'Keefe's reaction to his sister's death as proof of his priorities. O'Keefe was living the life of a bachelor in Dorchester at the time, but moved to Canton and adjusted his work schedule to care for the children, cutting down an extra hours and switching to a more administrative role into 9 to 5 shift to better support the children, his friend said. He did so humbly and so matter-of-factly, added his friend Sean Cole, a retired Boston firefighter. There was a steep learning curve to parenting, but he did it for 8 years, said Paul O'Keefe. He did a pretty bang-up job, I thought. Kane remembers him as undoubtedly one of the most generous dudes I've ever met, who would always buy the first round of drinks when out with a large group of friends. Kane said O'Keefe always excelled at whatever sports kids in the neighborhood played: wiffle ball, street hockey, basketball. Cole said O'Keefe would rib him about being a firefighter, greeting him with, "Here comes the hero," and joking that he could pop into Cole's firehouse to say hi. That is, if Cole wasn't sleeping. Friends described O'Keefe as a Boston sports fan, traveling to other cities to take in away games of the Red Sox, Bruins, and Patriots. He attended opening day at Fenway Park religiously. On one such occasion, Cole shared Martin J. Walsh, then mayor of Boston, was involved in the ceremonial first pitch and wore a custom Sox jersey with the local area code 617 emblazoned on the back. Cole made an offhand comment to O'Keefe that a jersey like that should be hanging in J.J. Foley's, a South End watering hole. O'Keefe was friends with Walsh's driver, a fellow Boston cop, and connected Cole with him. Cole eventually was able to pitch Walsh on his plans for the jersey, and then Mayor met with him and O'Keefe in his City Hall office, signed and gave him the shirt, and posed for pictures with the two friends. Things like that tended to happen when you were hanging out with O'Keefe, said Cole, who had the shirt framed and gave it to the bar where it now hangs. We always had a lot of laughs, said Cole. Cole, a former Marine, got choked up multiple times over the course of a 45-minute interview when talking about his friend. He now lives in Florida, but is staying in a Massachusetts hotel for the duration of the case. O'Keefe always wanted to be a police officer, her friends and family agreed. He liked order and rules. During a Super Bowl party at their parents' house, when O'Keefe was in the bathroom, his sister changed the clock on the microwave to see how long it would take him to notice, Jackson recalled. When he emerged from the bathroom, he didn't even break stride, walking immediately over to the appliance to make sure it read the right time. Jackson said that whenever a group of O'Keefe's friends would go out, he was typically the most responsible, and he would make note of things like where the exits were years before he became a police officer. He was made to be a cop, Jackson said. Their grandfather was a Boston police officer, and John had always looked up to him, Paul O'Keefe said. O'Keefe was an auxiliary police officer in Duxbury and Falmouth before joining the Boston Police Department at the age of 29. He was assigned to the stations in Hyde Park, downtown, and Dorchester, and also worked on the S offender unit during his 15-plus years working for the department, according to his department roster card. A fellow Boston police officer and friend used to tease O'Keefe that he was the sort of cop who looked like a cop even when he was off duty and out of uniform. You have your friends who are goofballs, who are good for a laugh, and you have your friends who are super serious. John was the perfect mix of both. The friends who did not want his name published, as he's not clear to speak to the media, said during a recent phone interview. Jackson, who commuted with O'Keefe to Northeastern University from the South Shore for 4 years during the 1990s and named him godfather to his eldest daughter, said one of the best testaments to O'Keefe's character is that multiple ex-girlfriends have shown up to the courthouse to support his family. That shows not only did he not burn a bridge, he maintained friendships, said Jackson during a recent phone interview. His brother Paul, speaking in a cafe in Braintree, recently just down the road from where his brother is buried, shared multiple anecdotes of his sibling. John driving his friend to cancer treatments. John taking in a Red Sox game when a man he had arrested months earlier came over to him to say hello, a testament to how he did his job. Paul said, John staying by his sister's side when she was hospitalized with cancer, John grabbing checks for family dinner. Paul O'Keefe noted that many people say they would do anything for anyone, but far fewer people have a chance to prove that. Johnny proved it, he said. If he loved you, he took care of you. John Hillard for the Globe staff contributed to this report. That's what I have for today. Please hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, leave me a comment. I really get so much out of your comments. And I will be back with another show at 6 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. Have a great night, everybody.